about this. What is this? Kingly thing. But what's he made up of? Can you see? That's a little people. Is he scary or yum? Definition of absolutism. Let me throw this out there for you. By the way, asterisk, that means it's one of your vocab words for the unit. So if you want to put in the margin or whatever, a little asterisk, so you can find your vocab words later or memorize them or whatever, do with it. System of government, that's what we're talking about. What kind of government do you have here in this country? Representative democracy, also known as a republic. Absolutism is totally different. Why do we call it absolute? It has nothing to do with vodka. It has to do with total absolute power. And at the time, there was really only two things over which you can have power. Church and state. Because the Reformation is happening, and you are either feeling as a ruler like you want to have a say over godly things or political things. We're talking about 1555. What happened in 1555? Raha?
Peace of Augsburg.
Peace of Augsburg. In other words, as soon as the Protestants start making trouble, the rulers start to say, okay, we got to do something about this trouble. We need absolute power. These Lutherans are making our lives difficult. It goes all the way till 1917 in some countries. Like which country? Russia, because you've memorized that date. So some countries will remain absolutist until the 20th century. Others will lose it here and there. Many absolutists believed in divine right monarchy. What is divine? Godly. The theory, and it is a political theory. Just like Machiavelli sat down and wrote his theory, other people sat down and wrote out the theory that said, hey, this guy's a ruler because God wants him there. And if God wants him there, what? He can do whatever he wants. He should be there. If you mess with him, you're messing with God and baby Jesus and Mary and all the saints and the relics. Even Judas. You can't mess with these God people. And they have divine right monarchy in other countries. Go to China at this time or Japan, they totally believe in divine right monarchy. But it also happened in Europe at this time. Why now? Part 2 of your lecture is called What Caused It? What caused people to start to say, hey, we need a God here on earth to sort things out? Basically the Reformation. It's pretty much that simple. On the left, remember what that thing is? The Civil War, where? St. Bartholomew Day Massacre in France. In other words, the Protestants started to get it into their mind that, hey, we want stuff. What do they want, these Protestants? The right to pray. What do the nobles want? More power from the king, etc. So the king is going to have to say, we got to clamp down on this stuff. That led to religious problems. It also led to political problems. Sometimes the peasants themselves rebelled against their lords. Where did that happen? The peasants' revolts, where's that? Holy Roman Empire. This is a picture of that, where the peasants then went to their masters and said, we got to chop them up. This ain't good if you're trying to lead a country. Fear was in the air, and I want to prove this to you with an interesting statistic. Generally, when there is a problem in a society, you can look and there are certain indicators that things are going wrong. One of them is violence. And it might have nothing to do with religion. So, for example, you may know that in the history of Europe, there were a lot of witchcraft accusations. A woman would have a wart on her nose, and everybody would say, why do you have that wart on your nose? And they would say, she must be a witch. So what do we do with witches?
Burn them.
Burn them! Or we throw them into water and see if she sinks. And if she sinks, she must not be a witch. So,
or in Monty Python, if she...
But then she's dead.
Heavier than
if she floats, she's a witch. Because everybody knows witches are made of wax or whatever, so then we should burn her. How many witchcraft accusations were there? In the 1500s, 1600s, in other words, in the time after the Reformation, during this Reformation time period, about 100,000 people were accused of being witches in Europe, and were killed, burned, buried, chopped up, whatever. Many of these people were women. So that should go to show you right there. What's going on here? What's the base fear? Is the Reformation about women? What's the Reformation about?
Power.
Questioning who are the traditional people who have power. So maybe women just get blamed for this. And what did the Reformation do for women? Did it help women? No. Yeah! What did it do for women?
Oh, you could go to school.
You could go to school and start reading and start being your own preacher. So some of this is just general anxiety. That's my point to you. Many of the women who were accused of witchcraftery
Glad to do it once.
We're midwives. Do you know what a midwife is?
Someone else, right?
They deliver
What am I doing?
babies. So back then they had doctors, but the doctor was a
That's like
barber.
stuff that
So
go
for the specific task of delivering babies, they needed a woman called a midwife. What would a midwife have that might be suspicious? Other than blood on her hands. What do witches have?
Wands.
Potions, for example. Herbs, spices, things that you're supposed to take and that are going to make you better. So then they go into her room and they say, what are you doing with all these potions and things? And then they'd say, you must be witch. They'd chuck her in the water, and that would be that. So I think witchcraft is a good example that people were generally frightful at this time. And I tell you about witchcraft because I'm going to skip the section in the book where you have to read about it. Now, the year is 1651. What just ended in 1648? 30 Years' War and the Religious Wars. One man named Thomas Hobbes, a political philosopher in England, sits down and writes the most important document for this unit. If there's one document to look up, read a little bit extra, read snippets up, I'll give you some snippets too. It is called Leviathan. Say Leviathan. You know what a Leviathan is? It's a sea monster, you're right. So, what does Thomas Hobbes say in his political philosophy? First of all, he says that the ruler should be totally sovereign. Let's talk about the word sovereign. Do you know what it means, sovereign? Sovereignty? All-powerful. All-powerful. Completely independent. In this room, I am the sovereign. I do not look to any of you for anything. My independence is totally derived from myself. And I really don't need you. I am the sovereign. No.
If there were no kids, then you would have
I would still have a job. It's in my contract. They can't fire me. I would just be in here teaching my puppets or whatever. This is a famous quote from Leviathan. He said, the life of man is, quote, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Think about that. Life sucks and then you die. And you don't die in very long. It's pretty short. This guy sounds a lot like whom? So Machiavelli. He's Machiavelli just after the Reformation. And the Reformation got ugly, so this guy's political philosophy is a little bit more ugly. He said, you've heard this before, life is a war of every man against every man. Or in other words, every man for himself. That's this guy. You know what Machiavelli said. Machiavelli said, fear or love. That's a famous quote from Machiavelli. But Thomas Hobbes is the guy that says, life sucks and you die. And he also said, every man for every man. Every man for himself. Therefore, a king should be like a Leviathan. And this is a good picture of what a Leviathan would be like. Technically, where does this idea of Leviathan come from? Do you know? Mythology and biblical stuff. Way back in ancient times, they didn't know what all these things were in the sea. And they would see them every once in a while. It might be a whale or something. And they'd say, oh, it's a Leviathan. It's a sea monster. What does a sea monster do?
Eat.
Eats! What does it eat?
Everything.
Smaller monsters. That is this guy's political philosophy. It's good to be a monster if you're a king. Eat when you're hungry. Even if you're not hungry, eat just to spread the blood through the water. To show the other beasts that you are the Leviathan. Ooh. So this is what we're talking about here, people. Everything was feudalism forever. From 476, the fall of the Roman Empire, until like when we're talking about right now. And suddenly, the Reformation scared the crap out of European rulers. And so they had to develop a new system. And that new system is going to be called Absolutism. Now, today, I don't even want to talk to you about Absolutism in this lecture. We're going to talk about Absolutism starting on Thursday. What I want to talk to you about is the transition up to Absolutism. In other words, there was some kind of early activity right around here that centered around 1492, the Reconquista. What was the Reconquista? The reconquering of España. And this is what I really want to talk to you about today, this very small time period in here that was kind of what gave birth to Absolutism. And we're going to call that thing the New Monarchies. Turn to your partner and take 2 minutes and be like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And start writing down a summary. After the Reformation,
So, Samson said the new monarchies are monarchies that are new. We're a match. What do you think?
After the Reformation,
What are new
You're
monarchies?
being recorded again.
Oh, we are?
Why would you just say that?
Hey,
Shut up,
say
Betty.
it.
after the Reformation,
Samson likes me.
after the Reformation, a new Machiavellian style of politics emerged.
Would you like to hear some nice notes you got there, Samson?
Thank you.
So now you know what Calvin and Hobbes means.
Whoa. My name was almost Calvin.
What's happening?
Troublemaker, and then
That so makes sense.
That's
Yeah.
good.
He destroyed. He
Calvin.
eats people. That's troublesome.
You got the matter for
Calvin Leviathan. Like
Fine.
talk about hummus talks
You're
about
He's not collecting it.
what?
Right on the back.
Hummus talks. Yeah, Calvin followed the Leviathan, right? There you go. Fire away. I said hummus talks. No, I said
as you write a minute, questions for me so far? Questions for me so far?
Calvin Leviathan.
No, yes.
What is
Leviathan is the name of the book.
No,
And
what is it?
Leviathan literally means sea monster. I would have to go back and look at the etymology. I'm not sure what the word means literally, like if you wrote down the part. But that's what we're talking about. I continue at this point. So, we're interested in a very short period of time today before absolutism really emerges and becomes really nasty. And we're going to call this time period the period of new monarchy. What does new mean?
New.
Brand new.
Upcoming.
Fresh. Okay, I'll take it. What's a monarch?
King.
King. Suddenly there were these new things that emerged that were different than before. Were there kings in feudalism?
Yes.
Sure, but these are going to be different. And we're talking about early modern Europe. So after Middle Ages, but just barely into the Reformation. We're talking about the early modern European history. That's where we are. We've defined that as after 1453. These monarchs are going to take all the power in the country and they're going to try to centralize it. Now, centralize it doesn't mean more power. It means they want it in one place. Literally, like you could go to this place. Like my castle, my room, me, and this scepter. It's in one place. All the power. It's centralized. It doesn't mean that there's necessarily more power. It just means it's in one place. It's concentrated. Power over the economy. Because who in this room, their favorite thing isn't money? Power over colonies. Thanks to whom? Who's your first explorer? Colombo. So now that you have these new colonies, the new monarchs are going to want control over them. And you want a standing army. In medieval times, where did you get your warriors from? Knights. The nobles and the knights. And they would have to say, hey, call the soldiers. But now you have something called a standing army. What's a standing army?
They're always
It's always there. That's their job. They're in the army. You could assemble it in 5 minutes' time. Religious unity is the goal, because what's the problem here? Religious disunity, in other words, Lutheranism. And very lastly, there is a sense of sameness. Me, you, same country, same culture, same language, same religion. I like you, you're like me. And if anyone is different, we don't like them. Off with their head, or off with their religion, or off with their differentness, or off with their face, or whatever you don't like about that. So we are talking about a new type of government. So this is what we're talking about today. Just this tiny little, say that. That is the international sound for new monarchy. The Holy Roman Empire was not a new monarchy. It's an old empire. What's the difference between the Holy Roman Empire and Spain? How is Spain after 1492 different? What did Spain do?
Spain became not a city-state, but like
A nation-state.
Yeah.
That's what we called it. For the rest of this year, we're going to be talking about these things. They're called nation-states, or in other words, countries. Everybody here speaks Spanish. Everybody's religion is what? Catholic. Everybody identifies as Spanish. Here, in this Holy Roman Empire, you could be, hey, I'm Swiss, I'm not German. And these people are like, I'm Italian, I'm not German. And these people are like, I'm Dutch, I'm not German. There's no sense of national unity here. The only thing holding these people together is what? The emperor. And you have a king. But he's Italian and you're Italian. You like your Italian. But you also have an emperor. You don't like him. He's German. This is very different from this. In this lecture, I'm talking about this thing. These new states. We have talked about these people before, and now we got to learn about them in detail. Ferdinand and Isabella. First of all, every time I tell you about these people now, you have to start saying what country they're in and what is their house, what is their dynasty, what is their family name. So this is Isabella and Ferdinand of Spain. If you just say Ferdinand, that could be anywhere. There's Ferdinands in Germany. Technically, it's Ferdinand II and Isabel I, or Isabella I. Nobody ever calls him that. If you just call him Ferdinand and Isabel, you're doing fine. Or Isabel and Ferdinand. Their house is Trastamara. Say Trastamara. That's their family name. In other words, their daddy was Trastamara, and their children were Trastamara. What did they do that made them new monarchs? First of all, they had two kingdoms. One was Castile, or Castilla, and one was Aragon, or Aragon. They united, 1469. They chose to make one state. They wanted one government. So in other words, they could have kept separate governments. Said, you have your government, I have my government. They did not. They centralized, and they based their law on ancient Roman law. Why? Who's their model in ancient Rome? Caesar. Because Caesar ran the whole frickin' Mediterranean. He ruled. And so they want to be like Caesar. They got to choose the church officials. Which religion is in Spain? Catholic, but they get to choose the bishops and the cardinals. In other words, who usually chooses them? The Pope says, hey, you, I like you, you're my nephew, go be the cardinal in Spain. You live in Spain. Let me know how things are going over there in Spain. But if these people say, hey, church, we want to be able to choose you. Why does the church allow that?
Because it's more Catholicism.
We'll see. The year is 1478. These are the people that start the Inquisition. Inquisition is basically a formal trial. It happens to thousands of people. Suddenly they think you're a witch, they put you on trial. You're not reading the Bible fast enough, they put you on trial. You're a Jew, they put you on trial. You're a Muslim, they put you on trial. You question the king and queen, they put you on trial. Trial means this. You go into a room and they whip you and beat you and pull your teeth out. That's your trial. And then eventually you say, I'm sorry. Or, yes, Mary is a virgin, I take it back. And then maybe they let you live, or maybe they draw and quarter you. They tie your legs to 4 different horses and whip the horses and make them run in 4 different directions. When you come apart in pieces.
Oh.
Then you're not a Protestant anymore, trust me. You're just in pieces, literally. These are the people that kicked the Jews and Muslims out of Spain in 1492. Look at the data. 150,000 of Spain's 200,000 Jews flee. So in other words, 50,000 stay. What do? They convert, we call them conversos, or converted people, or they lie and they say, yeah, we're Catholic, fathers are unholy, blah, blah. But they continue to practice Judaism and see.
That was rooting for Jews.
Forget Spain, let's talk about Hungary. Really super quick. Look at this picture of Matthias Corvinus. First of all, say Matthias Corvinus.
Matthias.
His family name is Hunyadi. Say Hunyadi. That's really easy for Hungarian. Hungarian is going to be one of the hardest languages, but for now, that's really easy. Hunyadi. In other words, when he died, his son was Hunyadi as well, and the crown continued. Look at this picture of him. What does he look like? A Greek dude. That's the look he's going for. In other words, these new monarchs saw themselves as Greco-Roman. They saw themselves as Caesar. They saw themselves as the Almighty. This guy claimed to be a descendant of Zeus. First of all, what's wrong with that?
It's so wrong, God.
Because what?
They're Catholic.
Zeus what? Can you be descendant from a dead ancient Greek god?
No.
What else is wrong with this? Are Hungarians Greek? No. And it ain't Catholicism. So why would he claim to be Zeus? It's his son.
Picture.
Powerful.
He's saying, look, I'm the most powerful being. God put me here back in ancient times, even before Catholicism. This is a fairly outrageous claim. But this is exactly what absolutism is. All of these kings did the same thing. This is Sigismund I. Say Sigismund.
Sigismund.
You are going to hate Polish starting today. That is how you pronounce the name of his dynasty. And this is not a joke. It is pronounced probably something like Yagyevwo. 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 If you don't believe me, I will show you a website where you can type in Polish and I'll say it back to you. Yagyevwo. So if you need to write down pronunciation so you don't say Jagiello, please do it. Yagyevwo.
But why is he?
And wait, I'll play it for you later and you can be like, what? How did they get that from that? Polish is a really difficult language. Sigismund I of the Yagyevwo dynasty ruled from 1506 to 1548. In other words, during the Reformation. One of the biggest changes. He is the king. So there's also like a group of people that we can call the legislature. Like in this country, Obama's the president. What's the legislature of our country called? Congress, and it's made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives. In Poland, it's called this, and it's pronounced same.
Same.
Same. Like it's the same.
Obviously.
Okay? In other words, it's their Congress, it's their parliament,
That makes sense.
it's their legislative body, the same. He went to the same and he said, hey, we got a problem in Poland here. These peasants, they got too many rights. We got to return them back to a state of serfdom. Do you remember what serfdom is?
Yes.
Your lord owns you. So in other words, this guy was so anti-reform, he went back to medieval times.
That's not a good idea.
So it's a great idea if the peasants are starting to get ideas. Like, we like Lutheranism. Well, now your Lord has the right to your life. So if you say, I want to read a new German Bible, then your Lord can kill you. And it is within the law, because your Lord owns you. So it's a very Machiavellian move. He's empowering the nobles, but it's really increasing stability on his part. Stop and talk to your partner for a second. Summarize.
Bible.
This is new stuff. So your mark, you blah, blah, blah. Talk. We don't talk, I will talk. And I talk to them.
Moving it around too much. No, but
Sigismund I of the Yagyevwo dynasty influenced the same. It's only going to get harder.
Sam likes Alana? Really? What? What should I take?
We have some this time?
2250.
It's going to do some homework. Additional homework to the homework you already get. Really? I see that much Yiddish.
No, that's a Spanish word.
Boy?
Oh, yeah, boy.
I thought that was
What does it mean? Girl say.
So you said,
What does it mean? It's like, oi.
hey guys, watch what you say, it's being recorded. Watch.
YouTube doesn't.
Moving
Who
on!
doesn't care about what?
Henry VII. But it's English, so we pronounce it Henry VII. House of Tudor. You've heard of the Tudors, yes?
Yes.
1485 to 1509. He's going to become before Henry VIII, he's Henry VIII's dad. Henry VIII is the one who chops off all his wife's head and kills Thomas More and wants his own religion and all that. Here's Daddy. Let's meet Daddy. First of all, England had just come out of a civil war. Do you know what a civil war is? Ooh, fighting within themselves. 2, or actually 3 different families are fighting for control of the English crown after 1453. What had happened in 1453 in England? End of what? Which war with France? 100 Years' War. 100 Years' War had ended in 1453. And at that time period in England, it wasn't clear who was going to be the next king of England. So English people are start chopping each other up, saying, I'm king, I'm king, I'm king. And this guy is the one who settles it finally. So you already know he's tough, because he emerges as the victor of a 3-way civil war. First thing he does is he says, nobles. I know back in feudalism you were allowed to have your own knights and armies. Can't have that anymore. Why does he do that?
Yes. Power.
So
Complete
no one
power.
can overrule him, so the Civil War stops, so no one can overpower him. Absolutely, it's a brilliant move. The nobles give in. They're tired of war. They say, fine, you can have all the soldiers. This is the guy that invents the Star Chamber. Star Chamber is similar to what they're doing in Spain with the trastamaras. It is a court. This time it is actually a court. It's not just a torture chamber. However, there are no juries. And, yes, I can use torture in the court if I so choose.
Oh, cool.
So I go to you and I say, I heard you had some knights hiding in your barn. And you say, no, I didn't. And then I pull your teeth out until you say, yes, I did. Even if you didn't. Pulling teeth out tends to be very effective at getting the answer that you want.
Until they can't say.
It is a one-room court where he can do whatever he wants to. Nice guy. I like the flower that he's holding. Look, I'm gentle. I will stick this in your eye socket. The Tudors claim to be related to King Arthur. You've heard of King Arthur?
Yes.
What did King Arthur do, supposedly?
Oh.
A round table and dragons and chop chop. Okay, that's invented. And the Tudors love that lie, and so they say, oh yeah, those are our relatives. Our relatives are god, beyond godlike. They're magical knights. They can fly and slay dragons. That's how I got here. So all these new monarchs claim some sort of divinity. Very lastly is Charles VII of France. Or maybe there's one guy after this. Very last is France. And we're saving the French till the end, because I think the French do it best. First of all, Charles, in French, we call him Charles. So we'll probably call him Charles. You can call him Chuck if you want. If you're friends. House, Valois. Valois. If you say Valois, we will throw things at you. That is a problem. Valois. Start sounding French now. Great hat, right? Is that a hat or an artichoke?
Artichoke.
1422 to 1461 is when he reigned. So he's very early. Now, I like this. In France, the name of the legislative body, in other words, the people who are making the laws, is called the Estates General. Or Estates General. Estates General. Because they represent the three estates. We'll talk about what that means later. Now, usually, who can tax? Can Barack Obama tax? No, only the Congress can tax. Same is true back then. The only people who can tax are the Estates General, the legislature. It's got to be voted on by all the representatives. This is a republic, after all. They have the right to impose what's called a tie, like the thing you tie around your neck. Tie. That's how you pronounce that word. The tie is property tax. He takes that right away from the legislative body. Why would he want to do that?
So he gets
Yeah, come on, I'm tired of the whole more power answer. Who pays the most taxes?
people.
Who owns the most land? Nobles. Stop. Who do you think is in the legislative body? Nobles. So by taking away the right to tax, who can you tax?
The nobles.
Nobles. Because are they going to tax themselves? No.
Har.
All right, let's clean that one up. It is a brilliant move. In other words, how often do you think Congress in America passes laws that increase their own taxes? Why would they do that? So it's a pretty brilliant move. And if they say no, he can pull up his own arm. Look at those massive sleeves. Yeah, he must have guns under there. Don't mess with Charles Blunt. But this is maybe the most important of them all. You're going to be reading about him tonight. Francis I. First of all, let's talk about his name. What's his name mean? French guy. Francis I. He's one of the first guys to really reside over the France that we know today. France equally, during feudalism, it wasn't this unified thing. It was a bunch of smaller little kingdoms that are growing and growing and growing. And when this guy takes the crown in 1515, just in time for the Reformation, he's like, I'm the first real French guy. The French have been there for a long time. But this guy claims to be number one. He is going to make a very important alliance. He's going to ally himself with Henry VIII. His best friend is the King of England. They're such good friends. Every once in a while they get together and they party and they drink. And when they get a little too drunk, they say, let's wrestle each other. And they wrestle each other in front of everybody and everybody cheers them on. They're like fraternity brothers, basically. Now, eventually Henry VIII is going to do what? What's his religious problem with the church? What does he want? Divorce. So he's eventually going to have to fight with the Catholics and the Holy Roman Empire. Holy Roman Emperor at the time is Charles V, the guy from the movie No! When Martin Luther said his little thing. This is going to start a rivalry between France and the Germans that's going to last till, I don't know, 1945. The French and the Germans are not going to get along with each other, starting right about here, the French and the Holy Roman Emperor. And this is really goes back to a rivalry between these two houses. This guy is Valois, and Charles V is Habsburg. And so they are going to be going at it forever and ever. He's called the most Christian king of France. In other words, what is he claiming? He's claiming what? He says, I'm the most Christian king.
He's the most God.
I'm divine. I control the state, and I control godly things, and God wants me here. Don't you know? If you don't, ask him. 1516, Concordat of Bologna. He makes an agreement with the Catholic Church that allows him to collect the tithe from the clergy. The tithe is taxation. All these key words mean tax. Taxation, tithe. So now, biggest landowner in France is definitely the Catholic Church. He takes that right away from the church to be able to tax the church. Why does the church let him? Well, the church is having problems around 1516. In other words, the Reformation. The church cannot risk losing any of its traditional allies. And the French are traditionally quite Catholic. He also wins the right to choose all of the religious leaders below cardinal. So the Pope can choose the cardinal of France, but he gets to choose everyone else. So he does what Ferdinand and Isabel did. And very lastly, he makes an agreement with the courts. Now the courts, the court where you go to get judged, in France is called Parlement. Say Parlement.
Parlement.
Generally in French, how do you pronounce it? Just don't say the last letter.
Parlement.
He gets the courts in France to be able to win the right to settle differences between church and state. So in other words, if the Catholic Church, if a bishop is accused of nepotism, the church doesn't decide that anymore. The Pope doesn't decide that. The court decides that. And how do you think those judges get their job? Who picks a judge? The king. So he's really saying I have power over church and state.
Shut up. You shut up.
This is the very last thing I need to say. Then we are done. This is a review. We have been with our feudalism card for quite a while. Eventually, we're going to go into this hardcore dictatorship monarchy. This lecture today was just about the new monarchs, these transitional figures. You know what's coming eventually is the Enlightenment. The French Revolution, Locke's 2 treatises on government, all people should have divine rights, Ben Franklin, George Washington, American Revolution, light bulbs, yay! Let's go fly a kite in the storm. Eventually, these guys are going to become a little softer, and we're going to call them enlightened absolutists. They're still kings, but it's not as harsh as they used to be. This is what we're going to do for this whole unit. Today we did new monarchs. We're going to do like 3 weeks on absolutism and a week on enlightened absolutism. It's a ton of history. Hope you love it.